Okay, so Bezras Hashem, we're going to try a little bit to prepare for Chag HaSukkos Haba Aleinu L'Tova, Zman Simchasenu. And I'm going to focus on a question that I've always focused on when it comes to Sukkos, and it's an idea that I'm always thinking about when it comes to Sukkos, and it's an idea that really comes out most intensely from the tzaddikim of Ishbitz and Radzin, especially the Sod Yesharim on Chag HaSukkos, which is obviously based on the teachings of his grandfather and his father, the Mei Shiloach, as well as the Beis Yaakov. It's also something that comes out very clearly in the writings of Rav Tzadok, and then when one compares these ideas to the teachings of Rabbi Nachman and to the teachings of Chabad and to the teachings of the Vilna Gaon, one sees that all of these ideas are moving to a singular place to illuminate the experience or the presence of mind that Sukkot invokes within the individual. Sukkot is a time of simcha. Sukkot is a time of relinquishing the intensity and effort that we engaged in during Elul, during Rosh Hashanah, Aseret Yemei Tshuva, and Yom Kippurim, the Yomim Noraim, those days of intensity, those days of awe, those days that are associated with the left side of experience, which represents constriction and the need to clench our muscles in order to recuperate a strength that we didn't even know that we had in order to face the intensity of the days, to fight through the battles of Rosh Hashanah and the Aseret Yemei Tshuva, and to come into a place of Yom Kippurim with the severity of the mind and the pinpoint hyper focus that one is needed to engage in. And then we associate Sukkot with resting, with putting down that left side of things, with the capacity to relinquish the intensity and enter into the space of the right side, Yaminu Tichabkeni, the hug of the right side, a place of chesed, a place of openness and expansivity, a place of being able to relinquish our strength and the ease that the body and the mind and the heart feel when they feel safe enough to let their guard down with no need to kind of utilize every element of protection of the soul. And a person leans into a menucha kitov. A person theoretically thinks of an ease, an airy breeze that awakens within the mind a sense of calmness and the ability to lay down the burdens that we carry and to rest assuredly within the space of simcha. Simcha represents in the mind a certain excitability, a certain emotional preparedness that allows me to smoothly meld into whatever situation I face in that moment. Simcha gives me the strength to receive experience with a sense of open-heartedness and confidence rather than fear or terror. And we associate simcha with joy, unbridled joy, an expansivity of the self, perhaps one that even expresses itself downwards into the body. It's a sense of all rightness. It's a sense of being at ease without needing to necessarily worry. And so we understand that that's the mindset that we're meant to cultivate when it comes to Sukkot, when it comes to Zman Simchasenu, when we transition from the left side and the severity of the Yamim Noraim into the right side, into the Chesed of Sukkot. So we expect, it's not surprising to encounter the fact that what the Torah wants from us, what our tzaddikim want from us, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from us, is to find a place of good-hearted joy and comfort. But like many, many things when it comes to taking a second glance at the nature of what the Torah HaKadosh is telling us, where we have to look twice in order to understand the true power of what it's conveying. The entirety of Sukkot itself, the Sukkah, the mitzvos of the day, the prayers of the day, the Kriya of Koheles, the reading of Ecclesiastes on Sukkot, all of these things seem to bring to mind the opposite of the joy and the good-hearted stability that a person is meant to experience in the Sukkah. On the one hand, we have the command towards joy, with ease and relinquishment of worry, and living a life of carefreeness and floating with a breezy type of experience of ease. But on the other hand, we have all of the reminders, all of the memories that are being evoked through the process of Sukkot itself that are awakening within us the polar opposite of that experience. The Sukkah is a place that is no longer permanent. The Sukkah is a place of entering into the transiency of things. The Sukkah is a place of entering into the instability of things, the recognition that the walls that we build around ourselves and the ceilings that we place upon us to protect ourselves and the floors that rest underneath our feet so sturdily. Sukkah is a call to tzei mediras keva v'shav b'diras sarai, leave that place. A person has to not only call into question the stability of the home, but one is forced to actually experience a process of exile from within the home and to relinquish all of the trappings of safety and contentment and stability that we live with for the rest of the year. We're meant to live in a place of transiency, in arai, in a place of impermanence. At the same point, we bring about Koheles. We read Ecclesiastes, which doesn't only speak to the instability of the human's capacity to be safe and calm in this world, but it brings to mind all of the meaningless nature of what a person encounters in the depths of their existential concerns. The general four questions of existential psychotherapy that call human experience into doubt are death awareness, the fact that we will die eventually and that we do not live forever, a sense of responsibility that is born out of the freedom of recognizing that I am the one in control of my destiny, a sense of meaninglessness, a sense of not finding any inherent meaning or purpose to my life's experience from the beginning, the middle, and the end, and fourth, a sense of isolation. So those existential quandaries that typically cause the human heart to beat a little bit quicker than it should in this world, all of those things seem to be brought into the forefront of the mind on the time of Sukkot, in the time of Sukkot. Reading Ecclesiastes, reading Koheles brings to mind Hevel Havalim, the meaninglessness of all things, the empty vacuity of this worldliness that doesn't provide anybody with any stability, that doesn't provide a person with a place to rest their head assuredly. So we have Shnei Ksuvim Hamachishim Zeh Zeh. Right in front of our eyes, we have two paradoxical postulates that are meant to operate in once, and we continue to be stuck in the contradiction between the two of them prior to the settling of the paradox. The contradiction, namely, being on the one hand, we're meant to draw down joy and good-hearted presence of mind in the time of Sukkot, where we're meant to celebrate the victory over Rosh Hashanah and over Yom Kippurim, where we transition from the left side of severity to the right side of ease and comfort, where we're meant to sit and partake in Samachta v'Chagecha, and we're meant to experience pleasures of the flesh that reveal the potency of the Jewish body that becomes a receptacle for the soul. But on the other hand, what we have is this kind of unconscious awareness of all of the things in life that are seemingly standing in stark opposition to joy. Not only things that would theoretically diminish the capacity of joy, but things that stand in the stark opposition to our conception of joy. That if joy is an ever-present nature of goodness in this moment and the belief that this moment will last, Ecclesiastes, Koheles, the Sukkah brings to mind that this moment won't last. And in the belief of the lasting presence of a positive experience, Sukkot calls to mind the transiency of positive experience. So it's not just that Sukkot is a time of joy, but there's elements that seemingly might need to be gotten over in order to encounter true joy. But rather, the paradox is that there's joy on the one side, and then there's the opposite of joy, the awareness of death, the awareness of things falling apart, the awareness of things not lasting as long as we would like to, and us scrambling to try and find some semblance of stability for the all too human concerns that rest at the heart of our awareness of being creatures in this world. So we find ourselves with two oppositional states. And obviously, anytime we encounter a contradiction, especially one that is so apparent, the job is not simply to live with the contradiction. One can do that, and one can deal with the cognitive distortion of, on the one hand, enjoying the meat and the wine that a person partakes in on Sukkot, on the other hand, feeling the body and its frailty and feeling the existential antinomies that rest at the heart of self. One can learn how to grapple with that split screen, but that's not what the Torah wants from us. What HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from us is to encounter the contradiction, to recognize that there's a contradiction. Yes, there's a riboy, there's a pirud, there's a separation of the mind, there's a left and the right side. But it's not enough to come to accept the contradiction, but rather we have to uncover the secret of the paradox that rests at the heart of the contradiction. Because as we've spoken about in the past, a contradiction are two postulates that are standing in opposition to one another, and one of them needs to be true. And therefore, as long as the opposition is still around, the one option that I need to be true can't be fully true. And each side has to see itself as that. A can't be fully true because B is still around, then B can't be fully true because A is still around. And that's the contradiction. And there can be peace treaties that are made within a contradiction, but what that typically results in is A losing part of itself and B losing part of itself, and each side settling for the new space provided to it. That's contradictory. That's settling a contradiction, which is not truly settling it at its root, but rather learning to deal with it. The light of a paradox, however, the light of the Seser Elyon, which is the light of the Sukkah, the Sukkah is the Seser Elyon, that concealed place. It reveals to us the innermost point of contradiction, which is the light of paradox. The light of paradox is not that A and B must both be true, and therefore I have to cut off part of A and cut off part of B in order to figure out how they can work together. The paradox is that, yes, A and B are in opposition to each other, and yes, A and B need to both be true at the very same time. And in order to conceive of how they can both be true at the very same time, we need to relinquish the capacity of human grasp. We have to abandon the tools of logic, and we have to open ourselves up to leap into a place of faith that rests beyond knowledge, which is the point where train hafachim b'noisa echad, where two oppositional postulates are capable of functioning at the very same simultaneous moment, in spite of the fact that their opposition persists. This is a light of unity. This is a light of keser that rests far beyond the capacity of human knowledge. When I encounter the machlokas, or the contradiction between chachma and bina, if I'm trying to focus either on the chachma or the bina, on the understanding or the wisdom, and the two-sided nature of those things that they represent, so then I'm either going to be with one or the other, and I'm very often going to be betwixt and between and in neither place. But when I enter into the meichin of keser, which are nimshach, which are drawn down in time of Sukkos through the light of bina, so what we're going to encounter is the possibility of a paradox. And the paradox is the recognition that A and B, in spite of the fact that they are oppositional to one another, nevertheless, it is within the oppositional dynamics where A forces B to reveal itself with its ferocity and B forces A to reveal itself with its ferocity. And they maintain the imbalance and they don't settle into becoming one or the other until we reach this place where the two-sided nature of things gives birth to a whole that is greater than the sum total of its parts, where the mind is now capable of living in a place where both are true. Where on the one hand, simcha, 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 joy, good-heartedness, shlemus, wholeness, a sense of ease, a sense of lack of worry, a sense of sober calmness that allows me to rest assuredly right here, right now, and to say, this is where I'm going to build my palace because I'm not lacking anything at all, and everything is all right in the world. And at the very same moment, for that experience to be tempered by and increased by and engaged with by the sense of transiency, the sense of things do not last, the sense that meaning falls away to meaninglessness, and what I thought I knew turns out to be something that I didn't know, and all of the fears that human beings experience in the ticking time nature of this worldly experience, where we're trying so hard to hold on to all of our possessions and all of our acquisitions, where the mind is forced to comprehend the fact that none of these things are mine. That feeling goes hand in hand with joy. Not that it merges with joy, but rather the encounter with that experience forces me to throw myself further and further into joy, which reveals a joy that will give room for the transiency of things. In the realm of contradiction, joy cannot make room for the opposite of joy. Joy cannot make room for that concern that rests of the heart of the human being of disappearance. Ultimately, that is the concern of nothingness. But in the light of the paradox, it's the nothingness that gives birth to the ferocity of joy, as we're going to see in the secret of Keser, where joy and its opposite work together to reveal the secret of the samachta b'chagecha, the joy that comes about on Sukkot from the light of Keser, which takes into consideration the very opposite of itself. And then when we can look at the trei ksuvim, hamachishim zetzeh, the contradiction at the heart of the Sukkos experience, which on the one hand is joy, on the other hand it's the opposite of joy, we can come to terms with the new third pasuk hashlishi shemachriya beinehem, which is the secret of Keser Elyon Alav Nikra, which is the secret of the Seser Elyon, which will take the oppositions and force them to dance together to reveal a secret light that penetrates deep, deep down into the very core of the human experience, into the core of the Jewish body, and it gives us the strength to carry ourselves through for the extended period of exile. When it comes to the Sukkah, when it comes to the nature of the Sukkah, Chazal tell us immediately at the first sugya, at the heart of Maseches Sukkah. So reminding us, as Rav Tzadok and the Vilna Gaon point out, that the first place that something is discussed really becomes the mark, the stamp of that thing. So the first sugya in Maseches Sukkah is really going to be the mark of what mitzvah Sukkah is about, and that is about sitting in the Sukkah and being aware of the fact that I'm sitting in a Sukkah. A person must be aware, Laman das, Laman yedu, that there's a fundamental need of knowing and being aware that I am in the sukkah. And therefore, the measurements of the sukkah are going to be important. And Chazal go through a lot of time discussing the fact that up to 20 amos, when the schach is up to 20 amos, a person is still aware that they're in that particular place. But above 20 amos, where the human mind's eye is not typically looking, or it's something that represents something being beyond my capacity to reach, so then I detach my knowledge from it and I become distracted. And so above 20 amos, I'm distracted and I'm not aware of the fact that I'm sitting in a sukkah. And if it's below 20 amos, then I'm aware of sitting in the sukkah. So it seems to be that the schach, the covering, the shade that creates the real space of sukkahs needs to be below 20 amos. But in Maseches Eruvin, on Daf Beis Amud Beis and Gimel Amud Aleph, we see a discussion with regards to a contradiction in a case of an Erev or a Mavoi that is built above 20 amos, and a Sukkah that is built above 20 amos. And so, in terms of figuring out what the real distinction between the two of them are, Chazal come to a place where they basically really define the nature of what the mitzvah of the Sukkah is. We thought originally in Masechah Sukkah that the Schach was the most important part of the Sukkah, and the Schach needed to be within 20 amos. But in Maseches Eruvin, Chazal come out to a place of realizing that really the actual name, the thing that represents the sukkah itself, is something referred to as Tanan halal sukkah ba'inan. We need the halal of the sukkah. In truth, it's the empty space that exists within the sukkah that marks the true essence of the mitzvah of sukkah. It's not the schach itself. The schach is the marker at which point the halal, the empty space of the sukkah, stops being an empty space because it's now cut off. And we need 20 amos of empty space of a halal in the sukkah in order to be yotzei the mitzvah of sukkah. So we see from this Gemara in Eruvin that the essence of the mitzvah of sukkah is actually the halal of the sukkah itself, the empty space, the empty air of the sukkah itself. We're not talking about the shade that comes about, which creates the moichin of sukkahs, but rather we're talking about the awareness of being within the space, that empty air, the vacuity of the sukkah itself. That becomes the guf of the mitzvah, to enter into the void, halal sukkah taninan. And so with this understanding, and the freedom to be doirish it, we're going to try and enter into that place of the paradox to understand what HaKadosh Baruch Hu perhaps wants from us through the words of his tzaddikim to encounter in the time of Sukkos. When we come to the nature of the halal, the aspect of a halal, of a vacant space, of a void, this is truly something that we came to terms with on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippurim. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippurim are about the creation of the world, and how HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. And the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, we know from the Arizal and from the Zohar HaKadosh, is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was mitzamtzim himself. HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to contract himself. Hashem's infinite light saturated all possibility of existence, and there was no room for anything other than the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Kavyachol, needed to undergo a process called a tzimtzum, a contraction, which left behind the halal hapanui, an empty space in its trace. And it's specifically within that empty space that there's an irreducible light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that remains. And then Hashem re-enters his light into that empty space, which is where the formation of all of the worlds begin. So there was a presence of Hashem's infinite light, an absencing of that infinite light through the secret of Tzimtzum. And what was remaining after the absencing of the infinite light was this vacant space, the Halal HaPanui. Now, we generally think of a halal hapanui as an actual void, as something that is devoid of something, as an empty space. But what we know from the tzaddikim, which is that tzimtzum eno kipshuto, that tzimtzum was not an actual act, that tzimtzum was not an actual removal of the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's no actual absence in reality. There's no void in reality. Nature abhors a vacuum. There's no emptiness whatsoever. Emptiness doesn't exist. So the way that our tzaddikim describe it is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealed an aspect of himself that is referred to as the Halal HaPanui, that Hashem revealed from within his infinite power the capacity to reveal himself as if it was presenting itself as an empty space, that the Halal HaPanui, the vacant space in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu vacated himself in order for the worlds to be created, is in truth still saturated with the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as all of our tzaddikim describe, except it's a saturation that reveals itself by way of absence. So it's a presence of absence. The halal, the empty space in which the worlds are created, is the presence of absence. It's not actual absence of presence. It doesn't mean that something was there and now it's gone, but rather it means that the something that was there is now covered over by something new that is there that appears as if it's gone. It's an absencing, it's an emptying, it's a levush, a garment, an outer shell kavyachol that HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals, like the locust whose exoskeleton emerges from within itself to conceal itself. The tzimtzum is the revelation of an empty space that is a koach miyuchad with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a koach hamastir. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is megala. Hashem revealed the capacity to conceal himself. And that's what the halal hapanui is. And so when we talk about the halal hapanui, when we talk about the void in which existence exists, and our need to draw the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu back down into the void, it doesn't mean that we're trying to draw down something that was present and now absent back into the place that it's now absent from, but rather we're coming to reveal something that has always already been there underfoot, revealing itself at every moment, except it's only been revealed by way of concealment, and it's our job to come to terms with what the actual nature of concealment is, which is the secret of understanding what the halal hapanui is. The halal hapanui, in spite of the fact that it appears to be the empty space, when we come to understand that it's in truth saturated with the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, except that saturation expresses itself by way of emptiness, so then we come to understand that the halal has always been filled, and we come to properly understand the nature of emptying ourselves out and entering into empty places in our lives. Halal sukkah ba'inan, the fact that we need the empty space within the sukkah, means that in order to experience Sukkos, a person has to enter into that empty space. A person has to enter into the halal. A person has to enter into that vacant space, to that open canvas of possibility prior to expression, prior to definition, prior to measurements or anything other than its potential. We have to enter into the womb of possibility. The womb of possibility, the secret of the sukkah is the halal. It's the empty space that is formed within the endless waters of infinite light that enables us to enter into that place of emptiness. And our job is to encounter that emptiness. And our job is to lean into that emptiness and to come to be fundamentally aware of that there is no such thing as emptiness. And emptiness is just another revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when I come to find HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the emptiness of the sukkah, what I come to do is I come to transform the emptiness of the sukkah into a place that is saturated with the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Halal sukkah ba'inan. We need to enter into the halal of the sukkah. Now, what is this element of the halal? When the Arizal discusses HaKadosh Baruch Hu creating an empty space, it's referred to as an avir rekani, an empty space of air, a pocket of air, a column of air. Air is the most refined of all of the elements that a human being utilizes in this world. Air, breathing in and breathing out, is the source of the neshama. B'chol neshima v'neshima, each and every breath that I breathe, I will praise out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When Rabbi Nachman told his Talmidim that things were going to be very difficult in order to connect to him, and there were going to be times where people were going to ask, what is it that you gave everything up for? What did you find by Rabbi Nachman? Why were you willing to let go of everything and go to that tzaddik to find a new way of living? What did you gain? And Rabbi Nachman told his Hasidim, when you walk away from here, and they ask you, Ma pa'altam, what have you accomplished? What did you perform? Tomru ruach, tell them that you learned the act of breath. Tell them that you learned about air. The secret of air, the secret of the empty air that a person encounters in their mind, in their heart, in their body, in their experiences in this world, is the place where we must lean fundamentally into in order to find HaKadosh Baruch Hu there. It's specifically within the halal. It's specifically within that place of emptiness, in that place of pure potential and possibility prior to any actualization, where the mind is triggered to find emptiness there and find meaningless there. And instead, our job is to fill it with meaning and to allow the emptiness of the sukkah to become the tapestry upon which we paint the secret of simcha, the secret of the avir, the secret of avir rekani, or the avir hapanoi, the empty air, the vacancy of air, the air that expresses itself in the light of vacancy. This is the secret of the hevel havalim. The hevel havalim amar koheles akol hevel, all of the havalim, this air, these columns of air, this emptiness, this inhale and the exhale, this filling and emptying that a person must engage with in this world, brings to mind the fact that ultimately the world is hevel havalim, that there's no meaning in the world. If all things pass away and there's apparent emptiness and things don't seem to last and presence seems to melt away into absence, and the things that I thought I could accomplish, I can't accomplish, and the things that I felt I could hold on to, I can't hold on to, and the anxious mind is triggered, all of these things call the mind to deny meaning, because in the denial of meaning, a person can encounter Yeish, God forbid. As long as we're holding on to meaning, as long as we're holding on to the irreducible kernel of the ability to find the chachma within each and everything, we can't fall into Yeish. But when a person finds themselves in a halal, something that seemingly disparages any element of chachma, it's our job to draw chachma into that halal, to draw meaning into the meaninglessness, to draw the breath of life into the empty space of the sukkah. And how does one do that? How do we encounter this empty place, this place of the vacuity of all things, the emptiness of all things, the fact that things don't last forever, the fact that things fall away and fall apart, the fact that things fall away suddenly, the fact that things don't last, the fact that no matter how hard I try to find that stability and that certainty to enable myself to rest assuredly and calm in this world, nevertheless, I'm still chased by the ghosts of the Yetzer, I'm chased by the ghosts of anxiety, of that fear, of that lack of bitachon. Where is a person meant to find rest? How is a person meant to grapple with what Koheles forces us to look at face to face? When Chazal were trying to describe the essential nature of Klal Yisrael, of Nishmas Yisrael, Chazal represent the neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu. It's the das of Moshe. The das of Moshe is expressed within Chazal in the secret of Moshe Shapir Ka'amart. Chazal is gematria ma. When Moshe Rabbeinu experienced his bittul, va'anachnu ma, what are we? What are we? What are we? The secret of what? The secret of having nothing to grab hold of, the secret of having nothing to determine exactly what my quality is, the secret to not have something sturdily to stand upon to define my personality, my sense of self, my sense of purpose, my sense of meaning, those moments of emptiness and meaninglessness that the mind falls into. Va'anachnu ma. It's specifically the ma. It's specifically the questioning at the core of self and the recognition that I don't have anything and that I don't stand upon anything other than the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That is the trait that marks Jewish consciousness. It's the bittul, it is the anava, it is the silent humility and the heart of an anonymity that doesn't come from a place of weakness, but rather comes from a place of strength. It comes with a security in the mind that knows that I will never be able to finally find comfort, and therefore I have to find comfort wherever I find myself. That's the secret of Chazal. Chazal is gematria ma because they awaken the mind to that realization each and every time that I'm going to have to be the one to find the purpose and find the meaning for my life. And the opposite of Chazal, the opposite, as we're going to see in Sukkos, which is in Hanukkah, which is really just the full extension of the Yom Noraim, the opposition to the mindset of Chazal, which live with a big question mark at the heart of experience, where we walk with bittul, is Chachmei Yavan. Chachmei Yavan was the attempt to draw down certainty, to live with a certain primacy of knowledge and the ability to tame nature and the ability to lay claim to the ability to be in control of things. That was Greek wisdom. That was the ability to see things clearly, as opposed to Chazal, who are about Tashma, come and hear, the element of Bina, which is what's reverberating in Sukkot itself. Yavan wanted to know things with certainty. Yavan wanted a ground to stand upon. Yavan wanted to plant itself firmly in the ground, while Klal Yisrael represent the ability to float without groundedness. And we find in Chazal that there were questions of Sabbath Beyasuna. The Sabbath Beyasuna were the ones who came, the Greek wise men, who would come to make fun of Chazal. They would come to deny Chazal the validity. They would come to poke holes at Chazal's strength. They would come to poke holes at the questioning nature of the Jewish spirit that seems to live without meaning sometimes. And they would claim that it's certainty that a person is chasing after, and that come to the side of certainty. And one of the questions that the Sabbath Beyasuna asked was as follows: Bani lan beisa ba'avira da'alma. They came to the Tanaim and they said, build for us a house in the middle of the sky. Amar Sham, Amar Shem. The Tana said a name. Tala bin Rakia La'ara. And he kept himself caught between the heavens and the earth. Amar Luhu, Asike le levine vitine. Go and bring the stones and go and bring the measuring stick and let's build it over here. And so that's the claim, that's the Gemara that talks about what Yavan wanted to say to Klal Yisrael. They said, Banalan beisa ba'avira da'alma. Go and build for us a house in the middle of the sky, in the avira da'alma. And this is exactly what Chazal are teaching us to do. This is what Sukkot is about. Banalan beisa ba'avira da'alma. It was said in a joking manner. It was said by way of ridicule that the Greek ones who want such stability and groundedness, they say, go and build for me a house in the middle of the sky. And through accessing the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we reveal to them that in truth is the true miracle of what it means to be a Yid. To be a Yid means to be able to build for oneself a house in the middle of the sky without the stability of the ground or the Shemayim, to live suspended in between, to live betwixt and between both options, because we live in a place that is beyond both options. We live in the secret of the unification of both options. It's not living in the ground with the ability to reach the sky. It's not living in the sky with the ability to touch the ground, but rather it's being talya ben shmaya va'ara. It's living suspended in between Shemayim and Aretz, ba'avira da'alma, in the empty air of the world, in the halal of the world. Halal sukkah taninan. It's the empty space of the sukkah that a person has to come and dorish the meaning into. Taninan, we have to draw down the light of Torah into the halal sukkah. We have to draw meaning into the vacuity of life, into the seemingly meaningless nature of how things happen and how things go on and how things go up and down, and without any capacity to define anything whatsoever, because the moment a person tries to define anything or put language to reality, it's overwhelming, and reality overwhelms the capacity of language to domesticate it because of the sheer force of that which is real and the pain and the instability that is revealed when a person actually looks at the real of reality. If a person were to only live with the avir, to only live with the emptiness of the world, so a person would lose hope. A person would be in a state of Yeyush, and Chazal would have pushed the book of Koheles away long ago, like they thought to in the beginning. But when we come to realize that sof davar hakol nishma es elokim tireh v'zeh kol ha'adam, the only thing that a person is capable of doing is cultivating that sense of elokim, that of hearing, of that inner auditory sense of bina and understanding and drawing meaning into meaninglessness. That's the only place that a person is going to be able to find the stability that they need in order to move forward. To attempt to live in this world, to attempt to grapple with this world based on the tools of logic alone, based on the tools of knowledge alone, based on the tools of rationality alone, and what I can define and what I can explain away, and what I could domesticate in my mind in neat ways of apologetics, expressing this way or that way, so that will never be strong enough to help a person forward in the face of the halal of the sukkah. When we enter into that empty space, after Rosh Hashanah, after Yom Kippurim, after Yonah ben Amittai descends down into the watery depths of the Tahom, into the abysmal depths of emptiness, and he finds the Levav Yam, he encounters the heart that rests at the center of the sea. In that place of groundlessness, in that place of groundlessness and alone where the highest truth resides, it's specifically there that we cultivate that inner place and we give ourselves the ability to face the halal, to face the avira, the alma, to face that question of the Greeks. Go, build for me a house in the middle of the sky. You claim Tola Eretz al Blima, you claim that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is infinite, that you have no grasp of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he's beyond any reason, and he's beyond any graspability. Say the Greeks, you claim that you don't have to use knowledge, you claim that you can live with the instability. Go and build for me a house in the middle of the sky. And on Sukkos, we do just that. On Sukkos, we say we will suspend ourselves in the middle of the sky because that is where we live. That is the place that we have. You don't have a place there. Umas Ha'olam don't have a place there. Umas Ha'olam need stability. They need something grounding. They need something to be able to pin the rationality of their belief on, to pin the rationality of their systems upon. And if that rationality and that ground of meaning and reason were to fall away, so then the systems of faith would collapse. But Yiddishkeit has never been about being grounded. Yiddishkeit is about emuna. The first act is Gullus. The first act of Avram Avinu as the first Yid, as the chesed that's coming down in Chag HaSukkos, is the act of leaving one's home. Lech lecha. Walk towards transiency without destination. Walk towards imagination. Lech lechach padimyon. Extend yourself beyond the need for rational clarity of why things are and how things are and what things are and when things will be and why they are, and suspend any attempt to know any of that and live suspended in the place of emuna. That's what Avram Avinu uncovered. Avram Avinu uncovered. He had all of the wisdom in the world, but it was specifically Avram Avinu's emuna that HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw and loved and cherished. Why? Because emuna was the recognition that, you know what? I don't know anything, and I'm going to stop trying to know anything, and I'm going to live with faith, and I'm going to allow knowledge to always serve as the handmaiden towards faith, where every act of trying to know, every act of groundedness just reveals another level of avira de alma, that I don't know anything at all. That I don't know anything at all. Lo yodea klum, lo yodea klum, lo yodea klum. I live in the halal of the sukkah. The halal of the sukkah. That's where the das comes out. It's the tachlis hayadiyah shalein neda. It's the hamshacha of the makifim. Those mindsets that surround our minds that we can't inculcate into our minds, that we can't rationalize, we can't gestate properly to make them provable. The makif is the ikar giloy of sukkahs, the clouded nature of the mind and the inability to know something because we're stuck between Shemayim and Aretz and the avira de alma. That is the hamshacha of the makifim. That is the knowledge that we don't know, drawing it down into our hearts through the lulav and through the esrog, and drawing that unknowability of all things into our heart, which is the secret that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I don't know, but I believe in your chesed. Banalan Besa Ba'avira Da'alma, go and build for me a house in the middle of the sky, and we do. That's the tachlis, we do. Zok the Heliger of Tzadok in the Sefer Machshavas Charetz. Miraculous sefer that reveals everything. But for now, we're going to just look at one piece out of context that highlights this perspective. That Sukkot is all about finding the stability in the middle of the sky, the awareness of that with transiency, I have to make the decision to find joy. V'zehu gam kein mitzvahs Sukkah, says Rav Tzadok in Osir Gimel. The mitzvah of Sukkah, which is associated with the Chag of Tishrei, and the Chag of Tishrei is expressive of this idea of learning how to live in a tower that's floating in the sky, is the mitzvah of leaving our permanent dwellings and entering into a place of transiency. Because when it comes to the neshama of Klal Yisrael, ki ein li Yisrael shum kviyas b'shum davar. Because in truth, there is no stability at the heart of Klal Yisrael. There's no one definitive trait that gives birth to the nature of Klal Yisrael. There's no one thing that Klal Yisrael depends upon. Klal Yisrael depend upon absolutely nothing other than the choice that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made for us to be irreducible. The nations of the world can't understand how is it possible for a nation to live in the air. They can understand They can't understand that Yisrael yesh lahem bazeh dira ubayis ba'avir. They cannot understand how it is that we can actually build for ourselves a house in the sky, stability within instability. Shari gam halamin miklal hashura. And what the Ummah Sa'olam come to see is that they can't understand how it could be that Klal Yisrael could learn how to tolerate the instability of not having any ground to stand upon. And this is why they came to Chazal and they said, Banalan Besa Ba'avir Da'alma, meaning show us, how is it possible? How is it possible for you to live floating in between the air and the ground? V'haresh sheyesh lahem koyach lezeh al yedei shem, and they showed that the only koach that we have in order to do this is with the shame of Hashem. It's only just like Hashem is independent of all things, so too we are independent of all things. Hainu al yidei hadveikus b'Hashem yisparach, by way of connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shu gam kein ba'avir da'alma. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is also in the empty air of the sky, because the tzimtzum is not kepshuto. Hashem is found within the halal. V'Hashem yisparach hu atzur levavam ubohu yesodam. And Klal Yisrael have the nekuda pnimius in their heart, which is where they find stability, which is the nekuda of the yechida, which is the nekuda of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'al kein yecholim la'as and we're able to create a foundation in the air where there is no foundation. And certainly we're able to ascend up there with the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we're able to build a house up there. But you're unable to do this. Because this thing, ki zeh hadavar bilti musag lachem, you can't understand this. Velo shayach lachem klal, you can't live in this place of instability. Ki im yatsu me'ashura, because if for a second you were to lose sight of stability and certainty, then you would lose yourself completely and you have nothing to stand upon. And this is why in the future, the Sukkah is going to be the ultimate test to determine the differentiation between Klal Yisrael and the nations of the world. Klal Yisrael lives in instability. We live in that place of not knowing anything other than the fact that we don't know anything, and that in the place of not knowing anything, all we can do is have emunah. And emunah answers all questions because it makes room for all of the questions as pockets of energy, as empty spaces that become the receptacle for more and more faith. Every halal sukkah that I enter into in my life, every halal where I don't see the yichud of Havaya and Adnus, which is the gematria of sukkah, where it's a state of a halal, is another opportunity to be magala, that yichud of Havaya and Adnus, to draw down the light of faith into that questioning space within myself, and to uncover the secret life of the sha'ashuin de'oraisa, the joy and the chidushay Torah, and the recognition that everything in life becomes meaningful, specifically because nothing is inherently meaningful. The only thing that is inherently meaningful is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There is no inherent meaning for the human being to lay claim to in this world, to stand upon. And it's specifically in that recognition, as we enter into Simcha, that we cultivate the possibility of joy. A true joy, a joy that is not dependent on something, an ahava that is not dependent on some state of stability, an ahava that is not dependent on some hasaga, an ahava that is not dependent on some ability to track my progress or something that I can lay claim to with absolute certainty. It's the ahava of breathing in the empty air of the avir of Gan Eden, that pocket of empty air in the halal of the sukkah, where I allow myself to take a deep breath and say, I am going to draw down shechina here. I am going to create meaning here. I am attaching myself to the infinite one that rests beyond all graspability. And it's specifically in my encounter with that ungraspability that I find the ability to take a deep breath, to close the eyes, and to learn how to be okay and find yishav hadas in that moment. To look at the schach and realize that seil d'mehem nusa, that all I live with is the shade of faith. I have no shade of knowledge. There's no wisdom whatsoever. There's no knowing anything. Knowing is only for the purpose of coming to a place of not knowing. Tachlas hayadiyah shelo neda. Lo yodea klum, lo yodea klum, lo yodea klum. Halal sukkah taninan. Amarti achakmeh v'hi rechoika mimeni. Hakol hevel, hevel havalim, amar koheles. That's the reality of the world that we face after Yom Kippur and after the 4 days in between Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah and Sukkos, where the mind is searching for meaning, and it's unable to pick up on something that's going to enable it to rest securely. And we enter into Sukkos with the knowledge that, it's the recognition that I can't rest securely with anything other than the recognition that I can't rest securely on anything other than Hashem, where I will find that comfort. That's how I'm going to learn how to build a house in the middle of the sky. That's the void. That's revealing the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu within the halal. That's revealing the light of Gan Eden within the empty air of this world. That's learning, like our tzaddikim taught us, to take a deep breath and draw down the ruach of Gan Eden. That when sitting idly within the sukkah and allowing oneself to tarry within the empty air of all things, to draw down a moment of semblance of Yishav Hadas, and to realize that Rebbeinu Shalom, you are here right now. Why? Because I said you're here right now. It's a sail of Emunah. It's the shade of Emunah. It's Derech Emunah B'charti. I draw down faith and I live in a comfort of faith that is not dependent on anything. It's not dependent on the ground. It's not dependent on the sky. It's dependent on nothing other than my ability to connect to you in the Avira Da'alma. In that place, we can learn to cultivate joy. Because joy is what happens when I relinquish the control that I thought I had and I allow myself to do the one thing that is within my capacity to do, which is to try to live with a semblance of joy. Joy is a difficult work. Joy demands building up the resiliency of the spirit to come face to face with the fact that I don't know anything at all. I don't know anything at all other than my choice to live in accordance to the way that I am living my life, based on the Torah HaKadosha, based on the mitzvos, based on my emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, rooted in something far beyond my capacity to understand where, what, how, or why I experience it. Being chosen to be Nishmas Yisrael is as unfathomable as understanding the deepest secrets in reality. One cannot come to understand why we get to be Nishmas Yisrael. That unfathomability is the joy of Sukkos. That's the joy that's Miskal and Shmini Atzeres, where there's no mitzvos, where there's nothing other than the unfathomable, unreasonable joy of living in the Avira de Alma, in the Halal Hapanui, and having the ability to be Megal Light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu down here specifically. That's the Simcha. The simcha comes about when I realize I have nothing left. What other trait am I going to utilize? My wisdom goes away, my understanding goes away, my knowledge goes away. The chesed can go away, the gevura, everything can go away, everything can fall away except for emuna. And in emuna rests the secret of simcha, because emuna and simcha are the ability to rely upon something greater than myself and to relinquish my control to something greater than me and to see myself as expressing the air that is moving through me rather than the one that is in control of the air that I am expressing. When I come to understand that I am the breath of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that I am a Ruach Memala, that all I am is the expression of the Hevel Havalim Hakol Hevel, the highest level of Hevel, the Or Mufla Remala, the Or of Malchus that's Yored down, down, down into the lowest place in order to ascend upwards to the highest place, in that place of Ruach HaKodesh, in that place of drawing down Ruach HaKodesh to the lowest place, I become part of the breath of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And in becoming part of the breath of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm mavata myself to the Avir Rekani of it all, and I create that empty space within my mind, and I empty out that cranial column in my mind, and I allow for there to be a semblance of an avir, dachya, a purified air to come down into my mind to reveal why the halal is the same gematria as chayim, why it's specifically within the void that I'm going to be able to uncover life. Because the pasuk in Shir Hashirim says as follows. Pasuk in Shir Hashirim says that kasha kashol kina and aza kemavis ahava, that love is as strong as death. Love is as strong as death. Why is love as strong as death? What is it about love that's as strong as death? And Zak the Malbim, Zak Rabbeinu, what happens is that when a person comes face to face with the transiency of all things, when a person comes face to face with the fact that I don't have ground to stand upon, and the stability that I seek out and the grounding that I seek is not strong enough for me to lay claim to stability or consciousness or calmness, so at that place, the only option that I have is to throw myself thoroughly into the Ahava Shabadas. Thoroughly into Das itself. As Rabbi Nachman describes, what we're drawing down through the lulav and the esrog is ahava shabadas, the love that I can uncover within my mind, not a love that is dependent on anything other than my mind. It's not a chesed and a loving kindness that is revealed in any way. It's the roots of loving kindness that exist far beyond my rational capacity to see them. And when I'm mamshech, that chesed and the ahava shabadas, the love that exists within knowledge, I can draw it down into myself and I can throw myself with ferocity into the moment itself. Ki aza kemaves ahava. That love is as strong as death. It's only in relationship to the awareness of the transiency and the recognition that the moment ends and the moment ends and it begins again, and that the emptiness of all things, it's only there that I can say the only thing that I can do in this moment is to be Moser Nefesh for Emunah, is to uncover that light of the Emunah in my Mesiras Nefesh for Emunah, the Nakuda of the Malchus, the Keser of Malchus, the Malchus of the Keser of Malchus. The Malchus of the Keser of Malchus. The Malchus is the Emunah in the Keser, which is Mesiras Nefesh, of Malchus of Emunah. My belief in myself that I have the capacity to force myself and compel myself to live in a place of faith. Again, the faith that I can push myself into faith. That is the one thing that remains. And that is what is going to illuminate the Avira de Alma. That's what's going to reveal how the halal is in truth Chaim. Because in that moment, when I realize that things fall apart and the center cannot hold, what thing is more important than what is right in front of me right now? Emsiusa da alma hechanhu. The Sabda Beyasuna came to Chazal also, and they asked, where is the center of the world? Zakif etzboi. He pointed his finger and he says, Hacha, it's right here. Wherever I am, when I realize that there's nothing anywhere, then it's right here, right now, that is going to become the Evan Hashasiya upon which the new Olam of Hasaga is going to be built. And that Olam of Hasaga, that knowledge that comes about in that moment, is simply going to be the recipe to bring me to a higher place of not knowing. It's specifically there that we can draw down the Simcha. V'samachta b'chagecha. I can be okay in the transiency of all things because I know that the only thing that I can possibly rely on is that which rests far beyond any capacity to grasp. It's the Amunah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The language of the Magid Memezrich is nifla when it comes to this. He says as follows, V'da, ki ikar hasagas haneshama. What is the essential grasp of the soul? Shehi maseges ruchnias ha'elyon. The essential grasp of the soul is its capacity to grasp the ascendant form of spirituality, emuna with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is the expression of cheshek, sheyesh bedavar ha'asiyah, the desire that contains itself within whatever we're doing. Whatever we're doing, there is an endless desire that is still not found satisfaction yet, because it can find satisfaction. The kol cheshek hu ikar mikoyach hatam. When it comes to desire that rests beyond my ability to grasp, desire is ultimately because I want to feel something, I want to taste something. The desire that exceeds the containment of our human experiences that can be grasped and known is what reveals to us that I'm searching for a hidden taste that is not yet revealed. The whole tam hu bilti musag, and any taste, any essential expression of something is something that cannot be grasped. And so we see that the ikar expression of the neshama is that which cannot be grasped. The chol davar shehu bilti musag, says the Magid, anything that cannot be grasped, hu chelek mamish me'akadosh baruch hu, is encountering the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Anytime I encounter my inability to know something, lo yodei klum, I'm accessing that light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is or ein sof, lamala, from every possible gvul, and I'm drawing HaKadosh Baruch Hu down into that kli. V'zehu zoivech le'elokim yecharim bilti lashem levado, meaning to say that I need to get rid of all of the externalities, all of the chitzonius, all of the din, which are all associated with misa, which represent things that are congealed and magusham and drawn down into identifiable terms, which is the opposite of emunah. Because anything that is magusham is a davar hamusag. Anything that is physical means that it can be grasped. The asr lanu lizvoyach lahamin b'magusham, and it's forbidden for us to believe or place our trust in something that can be grasped. Besoid eloikai masecha loy ta'asa lachem v'havein, and that you should not create for me a god of images, molten images, because that's something that can be grasped. And that's the same osios of Sukkah, because Sukkah comes to fight against that. Sukkah comes to remind me that nothing can be grasped. We have to believe in the spiritual thing. We can't grasp it. And this means just in Hashem, meaning to say the emunah that I have is the thing that is bilti musag, the thing that I can't grasp. That is what comes about by the power of the Or Ein Sof of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the emunah. And that's what it means only for Hashem. Without any engarbment in something that can be grasped. Besod rak ruchane de ruchnias, only the spirituality of spirituality. V'zeh perish hapasad ki bi chashak. A person has to yearn only for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is the secret of the Sukkah. Rabbi Nachman says that the Sukkah is just a kli that a person creates to draw down the light that is far beyond the capacity to grasp. It is our acceptance of halal Sukkah taninan. I'm dealing with the empty space of the Sukkah that's going to enable me to draw down simcha and tuv levav in this moment. Because what simcha is the ability to be okay in this moment. It's the ability to borrow the levels of perfection that will be revealed in the next world and to draw them down into the place in this world right now prior to experiencing them. Everything about Sukkos is the ability to taste la'asad lavo. It's the Suda of the Lavyasan. The Sukkah is made out of the skin of the Lavyasan, the externality of Malchus, those things that don't go our way, those things that are submerged, those things that are concealed, those things that don't have stability, like the creatures that float throughout the sea. They're not creatures of the land that walk firmly upon their feet, but rather they are the creatures of the sea that float freely without any stability. Chazal tell us that the world stands upon a singular pillar of tzaddik. Tzaddik Yesod Olam. A pillar implies a certain stability. It's firmly planted. But the Zohar Kadosh defines something else. It says that be'emes, the entirety of the world is sustained upon the fin of the Levyasan. It's mishotet in the yam. It shakes in the sea. Rokeha aretz alamayim. That the world is water and water. The world is the tahom. The world is that depth upon depth upon depth that erases any capacity of human beings to create meaning. And the secret of Klal Yisrael is the secret of David Malka Mashiach, who on the Simchas Beis HaShoeva, when everybody else is dancing and drawing down Ruach HaKodesh and drawing down sustenance and life and Simcha, David Malka Mashiach is saying the tesva of Shir Malos in order to ensure that the Meimei Tachtonim don't inundate the world again and return back the world to Tohu Vavohu. Those Meimei Ein Sof. David HaMelech understands that this world is contained within endlessness, that this world is a speck of a theoretical end of a tzimtzum within absolute endlessness. And the moment that endlessness reveals itself, the moment that the Meimei Hatahom ascend again, that infinite light, we come to realize the meaningless and the vacuity of it all. How could it possibly be that any attempt to make meaning of anything could possibly be valuable? How could a Simchas Beis HaShoeva take place? How can there be joy? How can there be laughter? How can there be meaning that is cultivated again? But David HaMelech understood the secret of erasing HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name for the sake of pushing those waters down, because the tachlis of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name is the secret of building a house in the middle of the sky, of Banalan Besa Ba'avira Da'alma Al Yedei Hashem. It's the same name that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives David HaMelech permission to throw into the water in order to be erased, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants Klal Yisrael to learn how to live in the sky, how to encounter the emunah of living in the sky, how to uncover the avira dachya, that purified air that fills the avir rekani, that fills that empty space. And this is why the music of the Simchas Beis HaShoeva is referred to as the Chalil, Parak HaChalil. A Chalil is the language of a halal, the key instrument, the Chalil of Moshe Rabbeinu, the Chalil of Moshe Rabbeinu, which we're trying to inaugurate into the Simchas Beis HaShoeva. The musical joy comes out of empty places. The halal, says Rav Hutner, is that instrument that I breathe into that empty space. I allow the breath to expire. I empty myself out. I put my breath into another empty place, and that empty place gives birth to new sounds. It's playing on the chesronos. It's revealing the koyach of Or Ein Sof that's found within the halal. That's the music that ascends from the Chalil, from the void itself. That's the halal Sukkah ba'inon. That's the secret of the Simchas Beis HaShoeva that's revealed specifically on the second day in the Ushpizin of Yitzchak, because Yitzchak is the halal. Yitzchak is the gevura. Yitzchak is the v'tischak liyom acharon, the secret of the laughter that laughs at impossibility. Yitzchak Avinu was born out of Yesh. She was born out of an impossibility that Sarah had no capacity. But that giloy of Sarah being nimshach down is the secret of Ruach HaKodesh and the secret of the Sukkah that Rabbi Nachman describes. And we're drawing it down into the makom of the halal, and we're transforming the pockets of meaninglessness with that irreducible capacity of the mind to cultivate new levels of emunah. The sha'ashui emunah, more and more emunah, more and more emunah, more tzelid mehamnusa. And we need more empty pockets in order to reveal that. That's the secret of the dancing of the Simchas Beis HaShoeva, of pushing down on the ground to reveal that we have to jump up and down because we know it's not sturdy. It could collapse at any moment. Dancing is recognizing that I have one foot on the ground and one foot off the ground at the very same moment, because Aza K'mavas Ahava, that because death is the thing that awakens within me the abandonment of myself into the moment with all of my ferocity, to love the thing that is in front of me with all capacity, because there's nothing else. It's the Ahava Shabadas. It's the Nakuda of Bechira, which is the secret of the Sukkah, of shaking the lulav in the Sukkah itself. The Sukkah is the endlessness, and the lulav is being mamshech, meaningfulness, into the endlessness of it all. And that's the secret of Koheles. That's the secret of Hevel Havalim. That's how we can learn to cultivate joy within the openness and the expansivity and the floating nature of what it means to be a Yid in this world. This is the secret of Yaakov Avinu, Nasa Sukkosa, that Yaakov went to Sukkos, the Karalo Bayis, and he called it a house. The Seidi Sharm asks in the name of the Meshiloach numerous times, what's happening here? He goes and he encounters a sukkah. He goes and encounters something transient, something flimsy, something that falls down. A sukkah's David Hanofeles, that's perpetually in a state of falling down, like David HaMelech's entire life, which is a secret of falling down and getting back up, because in truth he has nothing of his own. He has no years of his life. His entire life is a process of realizing that I have nothing, I have something, I have nothing, I have something, I have nothing, I have something. I thought I knew, I don't know, I thought I knew, I don't know. Ani adati, I know that I don't know. David HaMelech is the one who could teach us this. And David HaMelech is the one who reveals to us the secret of the stability that can be found within transiency itself. Yaakov Avinu goes to Sukkos. He goes to that Sukkos David Hanofeles, and he calls it a bias, because that's the Ikar Koyach of a Yid. The Ikar Koyach of a Yid is to look at the instability, not to deny the Koheles, like we said. It's not a contradiction, but to take all of the Koheles into consideration. And there's enough Koheles to go around, Rahman al-Islam. There should be no element of Koheles available left, and everything should be a Megillas Esther, and everything should be a Shir Hashirim going forward, but there's enough halal of existence for all of us to make Sha'ashuin of Emunah ad Ein Sof v'ad beli dai. There's enough empty space in the world, there's enough vacuity and vacancy in the world that each and every one of us can descend in our minds to create sha'ashum of emunah, of revealing the avira dachya, that air of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's breath within the empty air of the sukkah. And that's where we're going to reveal the secret of being a yid, which is building a house in a sukkah itself, realizing that the arai is the keva. It's not that it's no longer temporary, because if it's no longer temporary, then it doesn't have the qualities of what a sukkah needs. A sukkah needs to be a temporary dwelling that one has the capacity of coming to terms with, realizing that the only true permanency that I can possibly experience in this life is accepting the transient nature of things and leaning fully into this moment, which is the only opportunity that I have for simcha. Ki simcha teitzeu. I take myself out of the ruminations of the past or the anxiety of the future by way of simcha, by way of being saturated, a saturation, a fullness of the self. Simcha and Sason, Mashiach ben David and Mashiach ben Yosef, who come to reveal how it's specifically within the halal that the light of Chaim rests, that the light of life is going to be fundamentally revealed. This is what Rabbi Nachman describes, perhaps, as the palace of water. Sukkos is the Zman of Mayim. Mayim b'mayim. Mayim represents the instability of all things, where Yonah ben Amittai descends downwards and finds the Levav Yam. He finds that center point within Tohu itself, which is the ability to live ba'avira da'alma, which is the ability to go to sleep when the ship is shaking, because Yonah ben Amittai knows the deepest secret, which is that it's only up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ivri anoichi, Ivri, like Avram Avinu. I move from permanency into transiency. Where did Yonah ben Amittai draw down that Ruach HaKodesh? From the Simchas Beis HaShoeva. He understood the ability to run directly into the sea, because the Simchas Beis HaShoeva, what Yonah ben Amittai saw by the Simchas Beis HaShoeva, he says, oh my God, there's water that's about to inundate the world. David HaMelech is down in the basement ensuring that the world does not get melted away with the meaninglessness of the riboy of Mayim and the inability to make any reasoning whatsoever. And so Yonah ben Amittai runs out to the water to try and find the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the water itself. Find it Belev Avyam, and he encounters the light of the Lav Yassan, who teaches him that secret. And then Yonah ben Amittai comes out, and we encounter the light of Sukkos again, and it's our ability to reveal the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's stability and order within the disorderly nature of the water itself. Water has no stability. Water melts. Water falls away. Water dissipates. Water spreads forward without anything. But at the same point, there's a secret within the water of the Kriyas Yamsuf, where the water itself stands. The watery walls become like the sukkah, which is built upon the empty space of the sukkah. This is what Rabbi Nachman says in the middle of the sixth day of the story. The whole day, all of the Sheva HaBatlarim, this story is a story of Sukkos as well. Each and every one of the seven beggars is one of the Ushpizim that are coming, and the marriage of the lost children within the pit dug into the mud, covered over by twigs and branches, is the secret of Sukkos itself. But on the sixth day, the sixth beggar comes to offer his gift, and he's the handless beggar who doesn't have the ability to touch anything, can't build anything, and he explains in part of his story why he truly has the quickest hands, and why all of his inability to use his hands is in truth because of the true ability of his hands, and all of the instability is in truth because of the rooted stability that rests in the acknowledgement of instability. And he talks about the princess who's taken and is hidden away in the palace of water, the secret of the Mibtsar Shamayim, a palace of water, which is water that stands, the secret of instability and stability taking place at once, the secret of the Tzimtzum being a Gilui of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'shalach HaMelech acharei lavaksha, the king who was chasing after the princess sent his soldiers after her to catch her, the secret of Emunah. Uba'u v'higidu lo shehi nimtzes etzel mibsar shamayim. And the melech who wanted to capture the princess, which is the secret of Emunah, they said, we can't capture her because she's hidden in the palace of water. Ki yesh mibsar shamayim, because there's a palace of water. V'shamhim eser chomos, and within that palace of water there are 10 barriers, 10 walls, 10 partitions, 10 levels. Zeh lifnim mizu, one in front of the other. And each and every one of them, v'kulam shamayim, and all of them are made out of water. V'gam hakarka shoholchem aleha sham b'toich hamibtzar hayagam kein shamayim, and the ground upon which we walk in that place is also of water. V'chein yesham ilanus v'peiros, and there's also trees and fruits, just like a sukkah. Hakol shamayim, everything is made out of water. V'yoifi hamibtzar v'goydel hachidush shel zeh hamibtzar ein tzarich l'saper, and the beauty and the novelty of this mibtzar, which is the secret of Banalan Besa ba'avira da'alma, the palace of water, one not even need to go in to explain how wondrous it is. Absolutely, it's an impossible thing. It's a profound novelty. It's a palace that's made out of water. But we can't enter into that palace of water. Because whoever walks into that palace of water will lose their ability to stand. So we see that the princess is able to run into the Mibsar Shamayim, but the Umas Ha'ilam are not able to. Why? Perhaps because the Mibsar Shamayim, this palace of water, is the secret of Banalan Beis of Avir da Alma, built for me a house in the middle of the sky. And as the Meshiloch says and Rav Tzadok says, the nations of the world are saying, how do you do it, Klal Yisrael? We need stability. How do you live in instability? How do you live without ground? And we say, because we have a name of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, we have Emunah, we have the princess that shows us the way of running into the Mibsar of Mayim. And on this Mibsar of Mayim, on this palace of water, the Heliger of Avram ben Rav Nachman, who we spoke so much about when it came to Rosh Hashanah, says as well in Emunah B'Yediyah Haruchanis, the Chol Hanal, everything that we've already explained, is all included within the secret of the Mibtsar of the Mayim, in the palace of the water, Shenizkar B'Sipurim Maisios, and as is explained, Rabbi Nosson spends a lot of time speaking about this palace of water, and all of those writings are compiled in an amazing book in English. That palace of water is the empty space. It's the halal hapanui. It's the avir da alma. The ein biyacholas hadas v'achachma levobo. I can't enter into that place with knowledge or wisdom. Zulas ba'achdas ha'emuna v'hachachma. It's only when I attach my chachma to emuna and I realize that all of my attempt to know always has to be rooted and at the service of that which I don't know. Me'ha'oila shemayim v'yored b'nigun yadav l'rapot l'hakim l'b'sulas Yisrael. It's only the handless beggar who has the ability to go up and down in that place and to play the song to heal Klal Yisrael, to heal the emuna. That's the song of the Chalil. That faith has fallen like Sukkos David and Ophelis because it doesn't have stability and it's fallen into imaginations and kfiros and scared and fears. Because the only tool and the only kli that we have to transform the descent into an ascent is grabbing hold of that secret of Emunah in the palace of water, and that secret of Banalan Beisa Ba'avir da Alma. This perhaps is how we can enter into the joy of Sukkos, of understanding that the joy is in accordance with my recognition that the only basis for my joy is the radical choice to build joy right here, right now, not because I know anything, not because I have reasoning, not because I have understanding about what anything is, not that I have no knowledge of how to feel this way or how not to feel this way, but rather simply to dance, to draw all of the parts of myself into the dancing circle of joy and to reveal sasan and simcha v'yasigu yagon va'anacha in a place of lamal mitam v'das, in a place of the halal sukkah ba'inan. In that place we transform the halal into chayim, and we're mamshich the chayim, the chesed deboyim kol yuma, and we reveal the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu just wants to be megala his meimei rachamim and the meimei chesed and the infinite chesed of the chesed deboyim kol yuma, the fact that Baruch Sha'amar v'haya ha'ilam, and that above everything is the secret principle that all that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to do is bestow goodness, and that sparks joy, but only when we abandon our minds from trying to understand how or why, and we enter into the place of Emunah and Simcha be'ezras Hashem.